Right, morning everybody. Welcome to the Training by EOS Sequin Advanced Information Masterclass. My name's Neil Russell and I'm the Program Director here. This is our agenda for the day. So, starting off, you need to be really clear about what the case study assessment objectives are. Unless you know where you're trying to get to, your efforts are going to be, at best, slightly off target, at worst, totally misplaced. So let's be clear about what we're trying to do. Then, we're going to look at the financial statements, and the key word here is start, to identify the themes behind Sequin's financial performance. We're not going to do all of the work today. We can't. Okay? There is a good full 2 days' work to be done. Maybe even a little bit more by the time you've had a look at the Cinema Association website, checked out the economic data, blah, 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 blah. Okay? But it's definitely a full 2 days' work. But we're going to start it. So you've got some ideas of where to look for the information. Then we're going to move on to the other two requirements so that you understand how to prepare for requirement 2, which is a transaction, and requirement 3, which is an operational problem. Slight change in emphasis from prior papers. It used to be generally a strategic initiative. Over the last couple of papers, morphing a little into more operational. At the conference, the case study conference in February, the examiner was very clear, it's an operational problem. Okay. There will be clearly some financial implications. There will also be some strategic, longer-term implications. But the main thrust is operational. As opposed to requirement 2, where the main thrust is the numbers, the value of the transaction. And then we're going to identify what you need to do to complete your AI preparation. Okay, so what is a pass for the case study? You'll have heard a number of different things, I'm sure, for those of you who've been with other tutors. And for those of you who sat the case study in November, you've got your result in terms of a mark out of 100. And sadly, if you took it in November and you're here today, for most of you then, that number was less than 50. However, that number is derived from competency grades. And all it is an algorithm that converts the quality of your answer in terms of competencies into a number. And when we look at the marking in a couple of weeks' time, in the Exam Techniques Masterclass, I'll show you how that works in a bit more detail. But the fundamental unit of value is a competency grade. And you need 20 out of 40 competent grades to get yourself on the score sheet. Okay? At less than 20, you will fail. Full stop. However, even if you have more than 20, there's a second criterion, which is you need 50% in each of the 5 elements. Executive summary, the 3 main requirements, and the overall presentation of your paper. So there is nowhere to hide in this exam. Okay, so what is a good enough report? Clearly, it's one that's going to pass. So it needs to have covered all 5 elements. And one of the most common reasons for people failing the exam is that they have poor time management. They don't complete one of the requirements, generally requirement 3, and so they fall down on requirement 3. That has a knock-on effect to their executive summary, and that's it, game over. So you can't buttress your answer by having a super part of your report to requirement 1, the financial statement analysis. Generally, the easier to do because we have a good idea of what's going to come up. And then cover that with not very much on requirement 3. It just doesn't work. Okay? Then you also have to demonstrate 4 different skills. Assimilating and using information, structuring problems and solutions, what I call analysis, applying judgment, which covers a number of different skills, including evaluation, skepticism, and dealing with ethical issues, and then drawing conclusions and making recommendations. You don't need 50% grades in each skill, but you do need to demonstrate all of the skills. And typically, applying judgment, the third of those skills, people find the most difficult to do, very simply because it is the most difficult to do. But you need to demonstrate something. And when we go on to the Exam Technique Masterclass and further on into the program, we'll look at which are the easier ways of demonstrating applying judgment. So you just get on the score sheet. You need to write enough to cover all of the above, but not too much in any particular area so that you run out of time. Again, easy to write lots about what you know a lot about or what you're comfortable writing about. Okay? But that skews your report so it's not balanced across the 5 elements. And then clearly you've got to complete it in time. So when things start to go wrong, hope for the best, plan for the worst. You have a structured way of what I call bailing out of a requirement. So you do it in a controlled manner. You don't just free fall out of it. Okay? So that you can complete all of the elements on time. If we look at a profile of competency grades by element, this is a very typical requirement. And I built this in the days when I was an examiner. So it's probably over, I don't know, 40 or 50,000 scripts, something like that. It's pretty consistent. And it's still pretty consistent today. So, starting not at the beginning, but at requirement 1, most people do a pretty decent requirement 1. Okay? And the reason for that is we know what's coming up. Really? I don't have a hotline to the examiner. What I mean by that is it's going to be the May 2018 results. Okay? We know what they're going to look like. Each individual line item can only do one of 3 things. Go up, go down, or stay the same. So we can think now about the reasons based on our knowledge of Sequin why that might be. It won't be exactly right, but it'll give us a very good idea of what to look for in the exam paper. So we can definitely do requirement 1. Plus we do it first, so we've got loads of time. So a typical mistake in terms of time management is you spend loads of time on requirement 1, quite a lot of time on requirement 2, and with half an hour to go, you do a very internal blaspheme and go, oh dear, I have run out of time. So requirement 1, pretty okay. Requirement 2, little bit more tricky because it's on the day. You get the data on the day, and you get the transaction on the day. We can, again, have some pretty good ideas as to what it might be, but we don't know for certain. We're much less sure than we are about requirement 1. Plus, it's a mix of skills. You've got calculations and discussion. So you have to produce a financial appendix. You have to do that under pressure. And then you have to talk about it in terms of the assumptions. And you have to do a little bit of strategic and operational discussion as well. So it's quite a mix of stuff. But it's still, it's around about the middle of the exam. So you don't have the time pressure, which now coming to requirement 3, you definitely do. Okay? So problems with requirement 3 are time pressure. Ideas, okay, this is the operational strategic element. Dare I say it, you're relatively early into your careers. you haven't had that much experience, and sometimes it's quite difficult to generate enough ideas. Now, we can counter that by doing some really good preparation, and we're going to start that this afternoon. Okay? Often viewed slightly as the poor cousin of the paper, it's where 80% of people who fail in requirement 3. You get the odd ones that it's requirement 2 in the calculations, but by and large, it's requirement 3 that's the problem. Okay? The final thing is, in your desperation, because you're running out of time or ideas, you go, this looks really like something we did in class. I'll just put that down. It'll be fine. And my heart always sinks when I get a text or an email, 1:45, your exam will be 9:30 to 1:30, 1:45. Thanks very much, Neil. It was great. It was just like mock 1. No. It cannot possibly be like mock 1. It might look similar to mock 1, but it won't be the same. So you do need to answer the requirement that is in front of you, not the one that you want to answer. That then brings us to the executive summary. Time pressure clearly now racking up because it's the last thing you do. Either the last thing in total, because you might do the 3 requirements and then the executive summary, or if you do requirement 1, executive summary to requirement 1, requirement 2, executive summary, requirement 3, executive summary, the requirement 3 executive summary by definition is going to be last. There are 6 grades, 6 grade boxes for the executive summary, 2 for each. So if you're running out of time, you're going to drop 2. You need 3 to pass. 3 out of 4 is now becoming a bit of an ask. And that's why people drop their executive summary. So the most common areas across the whole paper for failing are requirement 3 and executive summary. Overall presentation of your report, people do pretty well. You've had enough experience, you'll have enough practice, you'll be able to write a decent report. That's not a problem. If we look at the profile of grades, assimilating and using information, this is using the information that's given to you in the exam paper and from the AI, but more importantly, using the stuff that's in the exam paper, done pretty well. The second box, there are two boxes for each requirement for A and UI, are wider issues. This is the context for the results, for the transaction, and for the operational problem. Okay? Not so good. So we're going to have to, and I think if we do some prep, that is definitely gettable. So that's something we need to just do some work on and have some ideas and be ready to put them in. Structuring problems and solutions. This is your basic analysis. Done pretty well. AJ, applying judgment, we've already talked about. Definitely the most difficult of the 4 skills to demonstrate. This is linking different issues together. It is doing evaluation, which is the depth of discussion. It's demonstrating skepticism and dealing with ethical issues. So lots of different aspects of that. We will be covering those over the next 6 weeks together. Finally, conclusions and recommendations. Most of you, by the end of the program, will be able to draw a decent conclusion. Recommendations, a little bit more tricky. You tend to get a bit imaginative and wander off-piste. And so you need to be precise, and they need to be achievable, realistic, commercial. So we'll practice putting recommendations together. Okay? And there's some obvious areas where you can make recommendations. So just go through that. If we just have a quick look at a marking key, then we've got over here just 10% for the basic facts and figures, okay, including the preparation of your appendices. Over here, 20% for your conclusions, 10%, and recommendations, 10%. 10% is 1 grade box. okay? The rest, the other 70%, including your wider issues, is for your discussion. This is pulling it all together. This is not a technical exam. The technical level is it's somewhere in the middle of professional level. So it's not as hard as the most difficult professional level papers. Okay? So this isn't super CR and SBM, not at all. It's really light technically. So this is nothing to do with your capability. You are all capable of passing this exam. It's all about application. Okay? Being able to produce a good enough report under the pressure of the exam on the day. That's the job to be done. So, as we develop our techniques, we're going to really look at this discursive element. Okay? How do you construct things right down to sentences and paragraphs so that you have a process that you know works? Because it's your process that's going to keep you safe when you go under pressure. And trust me, at 9:30 on Wednesday the 25th of July, your stress will spike. You're just human. Everybody's will spike. Okay? And then you've got to bring it back under control, go into your process, go, yeah, I can do this. What is that all the examiner can offer? That's pathetic. I can do this. And off you go. And we'll practice doing that. And you get into your routine for dealing with this, and you're done. And then it'll be 1:30, and then you're off to the wine bar or the pub or the jacuzzi or whatever, and you can get on with the rest of your life because you will have passed. And at one level, it's as simple as that. At another level, there's all the little bits that fit together into this jigsaw to make this process work under massive stress. Okay, so in terms of the case study imperatives, these are the 5 things that I think are critical to passing this exam. And the first is why we're here today, which is your AI preparation. If you don't know the AI back to front and inside out and upside down, you are not quite doomed, but you're very close. And you're definitely operating with one hand, or maybe even both hands, behind your back. It's tough. You won't have time to go flicking through this on exam day. So somehow you've got to get this 40 pages of information. Some of them are blank, I accept, so call it 33, 34, into your heads. Or into your notes, actually. This is not a memory test, because you can take all this in. It's open book. You can take whatever you want. I don't really recommend the shopping trolley or the wheelbarrow full of books. Not very helpful. But what you do need is a really good set of notes, because that's what you're going to use. And you need to be able to reference and find stuff from it quickly. The most common themes you will have practiced. And actually, you will start to know stuff. And when we meet in 2, 3, 4 weeks' time, you'll remember the things and key bits of data and stuff. You just will. But you won't remember it all. And what I want to see is, over the program, you not referring to this, but referring to your notes to help you, because that's where you're going to go in the first instance. If I was feeling really cool on exam day, I wouldn't even take this in. Maybe I might, because I'm quite risk averse, really. But I'm not going to. If I have to look at it, then I'll be really cross with myself. Okay, because that means I haven't prepped well enough. So that's what we're going to start today, and that's the foundation. Then the rest, I've called it exam technique down here, but actually the rest is all encompassed in exam technique. So we have 6 weeks together. we're going to spend this week, this weekend, and up to the end of next week getting our AI prep sorted. And then I'm assuming that is done. And the rest of the program is all about exam technique. So it starts with understanding how the business works. Okay, because you need to have a picture of the business in your head so that you can, as the information comes at you in the exam paper, you're putting it into its slots and places and going, right, this goes there, this, I understand this, they're off on this trajectory. There's 2 or 3 that they could go on strategically, but they're off on this trajectory, and this is how it's going to fit in. And I bet when I get to the end, I'll see something about this. Oh, yes, there it is. So you're knowing what's going to come. You're anticipating you can do that. On the day of the exam, you will, in the exam paper, you'll get a set of requirements. And you need to make some decisions when you see those requirements. What is the examiner actually asking you for? How are you going to tackle it? Okay? So analyzing the requirements, critical. If you get that wrong, then that is not helpful, to put it mildly. Okay? Then you're into your exam technique, which is preparation of your appendices, your planning, and you'll hear me bang on about planning. And I know that all of you will have met somebody who's heard of somebody who was a prize winner and is now a chief executive of a FTSE 100, and he never, ever did any planning. You never hear about the people who fail because they don't plan, because they tend not to advertise it. Okay? So, planning is the answer. Writing the answer is joining up the dots in your plan and making your plan into nice sentences and paragraphs. But that's all it is. So the hard work is in your planning. That's where you do your ideas generation. And then practice. Practice, practice, practice. You'll have 3 mock exams based on this AI to practice with, to get used to using the information, to improve your binder of notes so that they're more easily accessible, and to practice putting your answers together. And you'll start doing that not to time, but simply to produce a good enough answer so that you know what is required. If you always try to do it to time and never get there, you'll never get to that, do you know what? What is requirement 3 all about? I've never got there. Never understood it. And so you don't know. And then once you've done it, and you understand what you've got to get to, and you know how long that takes, 4 hours, that would be impressive, first time out. 4 hours 10, 4 hours 20, 5 hours, 5 hours 30, whatever, it doesn't really matter. You then analyze, why is it taking you so long? Which bits? So you keep what I call a time diary, and then we work together, how are we going to save time? You obviously save time by getting more fluent in the case, and more fluent in your process. But sometimes things just take a long time, and so you may have to cut some corners, so then we need to do that in a structured way. Okay, so those are the imperatives, and that's the assessment objective. That's what we're trying to get to. 20 competent grades, at least, to get you on the score sheet, but to ensure that you pass 50% in each requirement. Now, clearly, you could get 20 evenly matched, but that's pretty unlikely. So a target in your head is 23, 24, to allow for a little bit of the peaks and troughs. That's where you should be aiming. Okay? And demonstrating your skills, good enough. You write enough, but not too much. Everybody clear? Okay, let's make a start with the AI preparation.